Now, I'm certainly not a stranger to knee problems. About 10 years ago, I tore my ACL on my right knee, and following that injury, I made a vow to myself to do everything I could to never be faced with that circumstance again. Now, since that injury, I've kept that promise to myself, and I'm actually moving with more power, athleticism, and fluidity than at any point in my life. So in this video, I want to go over some of the knee exercises that I have found the most useful and helpful throughout my journey, as well as exercises that I continue to do to strengthen my knees for the years ahead. Now, before we jump in, let's quickly cover some of the main muscle groups that actually contribute to having knee stability. The most prevalent or common muscles that people think when they think knee stability are going to be our quadriceps, which there are 4 of, and our hamstrings, which there are 3 of. Now, it's not to say that these muscles aren't important. They are certainly important for knee stability. But there are also 2 joints on either side of our knee that I think contribute largely to the stability of it, which is going to be our ankle as well as our hip. So what I want you to do over the course of the video, and as you go through the exercises today, is try to bring some awareness to these other areas, not only the knee or the quadriceps or the hamstrings itself. See if you can bring some other awareness to different parts of your body, as that is going to help contribute to the overall stability, as well as it's just going to help to link more muscles to the exercise. The first exercise we're going to get into is going to be integrated abduction. For this exercise, you're going to come into a side lying position, essentially where you look like you're about to fall asleep or you're just kind of chilling on your arm. And what I'm going to do here is start with bent knees, and ideally I'm going to have almost like a straight line in front of me. So if I look down from my sternum all the way to my knees is essentially just one straight point. From here, I'm going to start to take my knee towards the ceiling as if you're doing a traditional kind of clamshell exercise, but we're going to add a little bit of a variation to it. Instead of just taking the knee up and going through the abduction with knees bent, what we are going to do is start to take the knee away from us, and at the same time that that happens, we're going to start to do knee extension. So now are we not only strengthening the muscles around our hip, but we're also starting to connect muscles like our quadricep to this exercise. Now, whoa. I thought we were talking about knees. Why are we training hips, Mark? What's going on? Well, let's back up a minute. You're right. So you know how I was saying there's these other joints on either side of the knee? Well, the reason why we're starting at the hip is that there's this muscle right around our hip called our gluteus medius. And this muscle is largely a contributor to our knee falling into an internal rotation. Now, an internal rotation or a knee valgus is probably one of the most common problems that I see with people with knee issues. So the reason why we're starting with the hips is we want to create a baseline of tension in the pelvis. So that way, when we actually go to strengthen the knee in a more isolated fashion, it's going to be in a more neutral position. Okay, let's resume back. All right, so where were we? We were at the top position. So we were connecting the quadriceps. So now that my leg is at the top position and we're connecting things like our quadriceps, all I'm going to do is start to hamstring curl. This is where you can start to connect things like your hamstrings. And then we're going to start to take the leg back down. Once my leg comes back to the starting position, the entire cycle is simply just going to repeat itself. I'm going to start to take my knee up. As I continue to take my knee up, I'm going to gradually start to extend my knee. Try to bring some awareness into that gluteus medius region. Medius, what a word. Try to bring it into some awareness into that area. Try to maintain some of that tension and think about connecting it to these other muscles as you go through. I would work anywhere between 10 to 12 repetitions on either side. That will be plenty to get the hips warmed up for the exercises that we have ahead. For our next exercise, we are going to get into a standing hamstring curl. So for this exercise, we are going to come into a single leg standing position. And if you are new to the channel, something we like here is shin angles. So we're going to start to create a subtle shin angle with our standing leg. Once I have created my shin angle, I have some stability established on my standing leg. What we're going to start to do is with our leg that is off the ground or our open chain leg, we are going to simply start to go through a hamstring curl where we are simply going to try to just contract the hamstring around a neutral pelvic position, and then we are just going to extend the knee and take the foot back to its starting position. Now this in of itself might be enough, and that is totally cool if that is your starting point. But if you are a little bit further along in your journey, then we can start to build on this a little bit. So instead of starting with the shin angle, let's actually think about creating the shin angle at the same time that we go into our hamstring curl. So as you can see here, I'm going to hamstring curl. I'm going to create the shin angle at the same time. And then as I extend the leg that is off the ground, I am so too extending the leg that I'm standing on or stabilizing with. What's great about this exercise is we're working both knees simultaneously, almost in two different formats. So the knee that is off the ground, or is the open chain, I am going to be strengthening that hamstring. And then the knee that is planted, or the foot rather, that is planted, that knee is going to be challenged from a stability standpoint as I work through the range of motion on the opposing side. What I would recommend here is about 10 to 12 reps if you're relatively new to knee stability exercises. If you're doing the more advanced version, you could even throw on something like an ankle weight. That'd be pretty cool. And you can do 8 to 10 reps because you are going to be challenging your structure a little bit more. For our third exercise in this series of how to bulletproof, strengthen, get the ultimate knees for your life, we are going to be working through a short lunge. So what we're going to start with here is our split stance position, where I have one foot in front, one foot back, and I'm going to be bearing about 85 to 90% of my weight on my lead leg. Once I am in this position, we are simply going to start to work through a lunge. Now this isn't a conventional lunge where I just want you to kind of pop yourself up and down loosely. Don't be that person. What we are going to start to do is take our hips back, and what I want you to be mindful of is connecting things like your hamstrings and your glutes here importantly. And as we are going down, this tension through our hamstrings and our glutes is going to gradually increase. And then what I'm going to do is utilize some of that tension to slowly stand myself back up with. And as we're coming up, that is where you're going to start to make the connection point to things like your quads. Once I'm at the top position, the entire cycle is just going to repeat itself. I'm going to slowly drop myself down, being mindful that my weight is on that lead leg, because you probably will notice that you're going to want to favor the back leg a little bit. Try to keep it on that lead leg. Try to feel the tension that's being loaded, and then you can just work up and down through this exercise. If you are new to exercise, or if you are new to lunges as a whole, the range of motion may not be that substantial here, and that is totally cool. You can go down 50% of maybe what you see on screen there. If you can get the same depth, that's awesome, but just be mindful that the tension and stability around the knee is our priority here. So try not to just go for depth for the sake of going for it. Really try to be deliberate about the exercise and do it correctly. For our last exercise, we are gonna get low. So we're gonna work some low lateral movement. So we're gonna come back to our split stance position, and we are gonna come into a half lunge. And this is where we are ideally going to stay throughout the entirety of this exercise. I don't want your center of gravity to change too much. And what we are gonna start to do is simply push the ground away. I'm going to land on the opposite side in that split stance position. I'm going to absorb some of that momentum and then simply just transfer that energy back and forth from one side to the other. And what we are doing with this exercise is we are taking muscles like our abductors, so like things like our gluteus medius that we were working on earlier, but we are also taking muscles like our adductors, which is kind of this inner thigh muscle, through their entire range of motion through a dynamic exercise. And what's great about this is we are taking all the preconceived tension that we have built up in our previous exercises, and we are starting to apply this to a relevant movement. You have to think that movement is the end goal and not necessarily the starting point. In order for the end goal, which should be moving well sustainably for as long as possible, our body needs to understand where tension needs to be. And now that we have somewhat programmed in where tension needs to be, we can kind of take our foot off the gas a little bit, and we can start to actually apply a movement such as this. We are not so much focusing just on the tension itself, but taking that tension through its entire spectrum or range of motion. So do your best to stay low as you go through this. Try not to let that center of gravity change. and see if you can start to feel these muscles fire intuitively rather than you consciously bringing awareness into them. The idea here is we are starting to build a intuition and a relationship with our body. So that way when we go through these movements, our body says, thank you, I actually know where tension needs to be and I can go through this safely, rather than going through this movement and possibly doing something that isn't good for my knees, my hips, or other joints in my body. So if you didn't know everything that goes into knee health, knee strength, and knee stability, I hope you learned something throughout the course of this video. Our knees are certainly a vital part of our body, but it is not the only part of our body. So it's important that we think about these systems and how they integrate into the bigger picture. I hope you found some value in this video, and if you did, something that would help me is if you threw it a like, as well as you can subscribe to more content similar to this in the future. I post a video once a week surrounding really how to create a sustainable body so we can be strong and healthy for as long as possible. If that's your jam, then I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Until next time, make sure you are prioritizing and then you are optimizing for you. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.